Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming and joining us for the learning of Torah Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. As always, we begin with appreciation to Torah Anytime for giving us their worldwide platform to teach Torah. We thank Kol HaLashon for their global network, Torah Communications Network, which has been around disseminating Torah way before both Torah Anytime and Kol HaLashon, to our wonderful Zoomers, to our subscribers, to those that are with us here in our flagship station, Agris Yisrael Be'ezev, of Fairways, those that are following on YouTube, and on the other mediums that I'm not even aware of. Tonight's share, we received the last minute a second sponsor. So we have two sponsors. Our dear Talmud, Philippe Block, Elio Shimon Ben Meir, it's a real name, Elio Shimon Ben Meir, has dedicated the share tonight in honor of the mitzvah of Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael that he performed this past July, for the safety of the Chayalim and in honor of their service, and for the recovery of the hostages and the safety of all of the Yidden Eretz Yisrael and Klal Yisrael. The shir is also being sponsored by Alona Bandar for the schus of the shidduchim of her children, and should be good shidduchim. Tonight we learned about shidduchim in the daf. It should be good shidduchim and quick for Rivka Bas Alona Devora and for her son Shalom Ben Alona Devora. If you would like to sponsor a Chumashir, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Yaakov told Yosef that you should bury me, Bekivri, in the grave, Asher Karisi Li Be'eretz Canaan. Now the word Karisi means dug, that I dug for myself, but it's also a lashon of mechira, and it's that I bought. Rashi says that in the Maris HaMachpelah there were two portions, and Yaakov took one for Leah, so the other portion Esav maintained belonged to him. So it says that Yaakov took all the kesef and the zav that he bought from the house of Lavan after working there for 20 years, and he made out of it a kri, that's also lashon karisi, he made it out of a pile. V'amar le'esav, and he said to Esav, Tol zeh b'shvil chelik b'mara. Take this for my portion in the Maris HaMachpelah. So, Rabbi Leibel Katz, Zer Tzadik L'Vracha, Schus Yagan Aleinu, in the Oyel Aryeh asks, and if he would have offered Esav half, 50%, he would have kept 50% and offered him half, he wouldn't have sold him. That's probably a lot more than the Arba Me'ah shekel that Avram paid for the whole Maris HaMachpelah. I mean, he gave him 20 years of, work. He gave him all that money. And if he would have offered him half, so he explains that Yaakov was worried about the two merits that he didn't have, and he realized that he was punished being away from Yosef for 22 years, that he didn't fulfill Kibbud Av, And he, number one, he didn't fulfill Kibbutz Av, and number two, that he wasn't living in Eretz Yisrael when he was in the house of Lavan. So therefore, to show Kibbutz Av, that he wanted to be buried together with his parents, Yitzhak and Rivka, and that he wanted to be buried in Eretz Yisrael, he was ready to give up all the money he made when he didn't fulfill these mitzvahs. And that's what he did by giving it to Esav. But the Rekeach says that we know that Asher Karisi li beretz Canaan means that I dug for me. Now here Yaakov is in Mitzrayim 17 years. And he tells Yosef, Al notik bereini b'Mitzrayim, bury me in the grave that I dug for myself. When did he dig it? He didn't leave Mitzrayim for 17 years. When did he dig the grave? So the Rekeach says an interesting lesson. The Rekeach says that when he buried Leah, at that time he dug his own grave as well. Now why did he dig it then? I mean, I heard of Zriza Makdim and the mitzvahs, but at that time, when Leah died in her 40s, Yaakov was a very young man, relatively. Why did he dig a grave then? And the Rekeach explains that not only did Yaakov do this, but all the Avos did this. When Avram buried Sarah, even though Sarah died at 127, and Avram was 10 years older than her, so he was 137, and he would live till 175, but when he buried Sarah, he dug his own grave. And when Yitzhak buried Rivka, he dug his own grave. And the purpose of it, because it makes a person, this is a Malbim, if you look at the Malbim here, on these psukim, the Malbim writes that this is in order to remember the Yom HaMisa. It's an exercise to remember the Yom HaMisa. We have, when my uncle Moshe, that's Rav Asher Weiss's father, when my uncle Moshe had a birthday, I'm not sure which birthday it was, his 80th birthday, his 85th. I don't think it was his 90th, but the family put together a Sefer Yuchasin, a very well-researched book of the pedigree of the family. It goes back many, many, many generations. One line of the Weiss family goes back all the way to the time of the expulsion from Spain. That's how far it goes back, to the 1400s. So my father was Reb Aaron Tzvi. His father was Reb Meir, who perished in the gas chambers. Hashem Yinkum Damai Reb Meir's father was Rav Yosef Weiss, who was the Rav of Zborov. Matter of fact, my father once told me that if you're not going to name your shul Aguda, told me this over 30 years ago, he says you could name it Zborov, because your great-grandfather was Zborov Rav, and your great-great-grandfather was Zborov Rav. So Rabbi Yosef Weiss was Zborov Rav. In the Yichus book, it has written that he had his own grave, he dug his own grave, and he used to visit it occasionally and say Tillim there. And he would say, when it comes my time, I have an ois gewähnte Platz. I have a cried out place. And also he did it for Yizkor Lo Yom HaMisa. This to do an activity to remember the Yom HaMisa is very, very powerful. Because, we call this world the place of darkness. Right? Why? Because we don't see clearly. Clearly would be that we wouldn't waste too much time on this world and get as much as possible time to prepare for the next world. Now, a person that has more of an awareness that this is a short-term stay, till 120 hopefully, will prepare. So Yizker Lo Yom HaMisa is a very important thing. So our Avos dug their graves early in order to remember the Yom HaMisa. It's famous that the great Rothschild, Reb Shimon Wolf Rothschild, Zecher Tzadik L'Rach, Schus Yagan Aleinu, was an incredible Baltzdaker. He had a baronial mansion, and there was one room that he didn't let anybody visit. Once a gadol came to the house, and the gadol asked him about it. So he said, look, if you want to see it, I'll show it to you. One of the gedolim. He opened the door, and in it, he had hanging tachrichen, shrouds, and he had dug a grave. And he said every day he goes into the room and into the grave to remember with all his wealth, one day, that's all he'll have is a cold grave. They say the same thing. Ramila used to say that in the olden days, at that era, every home had a picture of Sir Moses Montefiore and Rav Yitzhak Elchanan Spector, the Kovner of. In his mansion, in the basement, Sir Moses Montefiore also had a coffin, and he would lie down before he went into his baronial bedroom to remember that one day all he'll have is that box, that pine box. The imagery is very powerful. And that's why it's considered a great exercise to go to be Menachem Ovel. The pasuk says, it's an astounding pasuk, Toiv laleches lebeis ha'ovel, milaleches el beis hamishta. It's better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a wedding. Now, that's a very, very perplexing pasuk. A house of mourning is loss. It's the end. Today I went to be Menachem Ovel, my dear friend Yitzik Kurtzu, who lost his father. And he was there with his elderly mother. We said, Ein ish meisel le'ishtay. Her husband of over 60 years is gone. The Eineklich are bereft, the children. And it's better to see that than the great joy of a husband and wife starting their career together, a career that'll stretch out. And the answer is for its message, it's better to go to a house of mourning. And it's better to think, yes, it's a galgal achayze ba'olam, and everybody is going to check out. It should be not for a long time. But that reminder is a very powerful reminder. The Gemara says, Yizker Lo Yom HaMisa, a person should think about that. That it's going to come a time where I'm not going to have opportunities anymore. Because Meisim are Chavshim in a mitzvahs. The dead can't do mitzvahs. And only Hayom La'asaisam, we could only do it here. And always time is running out. And let's chaparang. And we're told that we have to think. Lifnei mi ata osid litain din v'cheshbon, to whom we are going to give an accounting. So it's a very important thing, on Pesach, the Abda Rav would put on his tichel. A tichel is a shroud. He would put on his tichel and he would make a comment, one day they're going to put this on me and it's not going to come off. That's what he would say. I remember my dear friend, if I could be bold enough to call him friend, the great Rav Goodman, who's in his 90s now, the Rav of the Woodridge Shul for over a half a century. I remember always sitting by his seat throughout the year in the Woodridge Shul. On a hanger was hanging a kittel. And I used to wonder, let him put it away. It's for Yom Kippur. What's he putting there? And I always felt he had it hanging there to remember. One day they're going to use the kittel on me. Limnos Yameinu Kain Haida. Person that knows how to count their days. Person says, how many good years do I have left? My good friend, Dr. Eli Puro, started coming to my daf and finished the cycle with me, even though he's a very busy gastroenterologist. And he said to me, something I repeated many times over, I made a calculation. How many good 7.5 years do I have left? Know how to count your days, and that brings to a heart of wisdom. And they buried him in the cave of Machpelah. So we all know that when they took him, Esav reared his ugly head and said, look, you can't bury him there. There's only a finite amount of slots. And that Yaakov took for Leah, that's mine. So the Shvatim that knew about that Yaakov gave all the money from Lavan, what a chutzpah. It's the Esav at his worst. They said, our father bought it from you. So Esav said, prove it. Where's the document? They had the document in Egypt. So Naphtali, who it says he was like an ayola shlucha, like a swift hind, like a swift deer, ran back to Mitzrayim to get the document. But Chushim, the son of Dan, Chushim was Yaakov's grandson, he was hard of hearing. He said, what's the holdup? Why is Zayda sitting here? Why aren't we burying it? So he said, look, Esav is claiming, and Chushim, to defend the honor of his grandfather, gave Esav a blow and killed him. And his head rolled into the Marsa Machpelah. That's where we have the legend that Esav's head, because he was Mekayim Kibbut of Aim, is in the Marsa Machpelah. They even have a sign up in the Marsa Machpelah, the head of Esav. That's one version, and according to that version, the Nevuah of Rivka was fulfilled, because Rivka told Yaakov, I want you to go away from here, because Lama Ashakel Shneichem B'Yom Echad. Why should I lose both of you on the same day? Because I have a vision that you're going to be both buried at least on the same day. And that's what happened. Yaakov and Esav were buried on the same day. That's one version. But there's a different version entirely in the Medrash Sheicher Tov, it's also a Medrash, this version is not well known at all. According to this version, when Yitzchak passed away, so Yaakov went to bury his father, and the Shvatim, of course, went to bury their holy Zayda. And after the Shvatim were burying, they said, let's leave time for our father to be alone with his father. So they vacated the cave, but Esav went in. And Yehuda was afraid that Esav would then try to kill Yaakov. Maybe Yehuda knew the nevuah of his mother, that why should I lose both of you the same day, and maybe there would be a fight and maybe they would both die. So Yehuda, maybe he saw something, maybe Taka saw Esav raise his hand to give Yaakov a murderous blow. So Yehuda was very mighty, hit Esav from the back and killed him. Yodcha, and that's what it says in the bracha that Yaakov gave to Yehuda, Yodcha ba'oref yodecha, that your hand will be at the nape of the neck of your enemy. Now, according to this, it would come out that the nevuah of Rivka was not fulfilled, because Yaakov would live many years afterwards. Yaakov would live many years after the death of his father. He would come down to Egypt and live 17 years in Egypt. So it wasn't Lama Shakel Shneichem on the same day, Yom Echad. But could be Rivka was referring to one of them and her husband, because she lost her husband and Esav on the same day. Or it could be that it was a warning. Why should I lose both of you? And that warning triggered Yehuda to go into the cave, kill Esav, and save his father. So it's just a very interesting, completely different version of the history of the death of Esav. It's also not clear then why only Esav's head is buried. If Yehuda smote Esav in the Maras HaMachpelah, why is it only his head was buried there? That I can't tell you. But let's move on to a very, very, very great principle of life. Great principle of life. Ruvain, b'chayriyata, you're my firstborn. Kaichi, you're my strength. V'reishis aini, the first of my power. It was his first child. And before that, Yaakov was pure. No zera ever escaped him. So you were mamish reishis aini. Yeser se'es. You were supposed to have the se'es, the nesiyas kapayim, the kahuna. The yeser eyes. You were supposed to have the extra power. You were supposed to have the monarchy. But pachas kamayim, you were hasty like water, and therefore al taiser, you lost anything extra. You will not have extra. So then the next person will be Shimon, or then Levi. But Yaakov said, Shimon v'Levi achim, b'soidam al tova nafshi. In their counsel, my soul should not take place. Ki ba'apam harguish. In anger, they killed Shechem and the entire city. So who's next? Reuven, Shimon, Levi? Yehuda got the monarchy. Reuven, Shimon, and Levi were very great. But to be a leader, you need to do things with deliberation. You cannot react by impulse. An animal reacts by impulse. You cannot react by impulse, but rather you have to consider. Now, this is so important that Reuven lost the right to be the leader of Klal Yisrael. So did Shimon and Levi. We know that the Gemara tells us, Haiman de miboy lemehave chasida. If you want to be pious, yilmaid milei da avos. You should learn Pirkei Avos. Pirkei Avos, what a masterpiece. Pirkei Avos is the compendium of all the correct values of Klal Yisrael. And it's not opinion. Moshe Kibel Torah Messinai and Masar Yeshua. This was all from the manufacturer, from God Himself. It contains the ethics, the values. It contains the correct character advice for Klal Yisrael. I always say that if a person wants to know how to be a parent, that's why it's called Pirkei Avos. It's a syllabus for parents. What's the very first law, the first advice that's given in Pirkei Avos? Now, you know, when we have a book on all of the successful traits of life, Moed Moed Every Shval Ruach, right? Ye Beischa Pesuach L'Revacha, let your house be open for relief. Having Mekabel Kol Odom B'Sever Panim Yafos, greet everybody with a smile, right? Al Tas Tfilas Keva, don't make your prayer routine. I mean, it has everything. What's the very first lesson in Pirkei Avos? The very first lesson in Pirkei Avos is Heve Mesunim Badin. Be deliberate in the judgments that you make. We're all making judgments. We're all making decisions. Be deliberate in your judgments. The Mesilas Yesharim has a phrase, Mishkal Chasidus. It says in the pasuk, Paleis Magel Raglecha. Measure and weigh the steps of your feet. A person, Rav Miller said that he still had a Rebbe who never said a word without thinking beforehand. And I was told by the people that know that he was referring to the great Rav Isaac Sher. Could you imagine? Can you imagine? He had a Rebbe, talk about being deliberate. He had a Rebbe who wouldn't say anything unless he thought about it before. Now, of course, it would serve us very, very well if we could use this in our marriages. A lot of marriages suffer because people say something without thinking about its consequences. How could you say such a thing? How could you say such a thing to the person that you're supposed to love more than anybody else on the planet? How could you say such a thing? You know the repercussions? But people, they don't think. That's what we're learning. Pachas kamayim. You can't be a leader if you don't think. You can't go helter and skelter. You can't do that. You have to be deliberate. It's the same way with children. You have to think before you talk to your children. Setting them examples for life. Children remember things all their life. My children quote me sometimes something they said 35 years ago. Ah, right, Tati, we remember you said that. The parasha starts off, Vayechi Yaakov. There's a remarkable paneach raza. We know that Yaakov's father, Yitzchak, passed away at 180. Yaakov should have lived to the life of his father. Avram would have lived till 180. He passed away at 175. Rashi tells us that Hashem caused him to pass away 5 years earlier so that he shouldn't see Esav go out the Tarbis Ra, that he shouldn't see Esav go off the derech. It's so terrible for a parent to see a child go off the derech that Avram passed away 5 years earlier that he shouldn't see Esav go off the derech. So, but Yaakov passed away at 147. 33 years before 180. Why was that? Yaakov was the Bechir Sheba Avos. Yaakov was the Ish Torah. If anything, Yaakov should live longer, right? Torah is Eirech Yamim B'Yamina, B'Smaila Isha B'Chavin. Kihem Chayenu V'Eirech Yameinu. So most of us will say, you ask probably 99 out of 100 people, they'll tell you, well, it's because Yaakov said, Ma'at v'ram yemei shnei chayei, and he said 33 words in that episode, and because he complained, so he, instead of living till 180, he lost 33 years of his life. We spoke about this last week, and lived till 147. But the Paneach Raza gives a different reason. Very interesting. Paneach Raza says that it's because, remember when Rachel took the truffim from her father. Her father Lavan had truffim. These were shrunken heads with shemais of tumah under their tongues, and they told the future. And Rachel knew that they were escaping, so she stole her father's truffim. Now she was faulted; she shouldn't have done it without asking her husband. But when Lavan accused Yaakov of stealing his truffim, Yaakov was aghast. His house wasn't a house of thieves. And Yaakov said a curse. Ima asher timtze elohecha lo yichya. The one where your idols are found should not live. And inadvertently, he cursed his own wife, because Rachel stole the truffim. And Rachel died. She died in her 30s. So he says, Meisa alai Rachel. Rachel died because of me. The Paneach Raza says, the fact that he said lo yichya, he didn't say shouldn't have success or shouldn't have this or that. He says shouldn't live. Yichya is B'Gematria 33. Yud is 10. Ches is 8, that's 18. Yud is another 10, it's 28. And Hey is 5, that's 33. So because he cursed his wife and caused her to die, so he lost 33 years of his life. That's a Paneach Raza. Now, on the Paneach Raza is a remarkable pirush, a very, very scholarly pirush called the Raza de Meir. It's extensive footnotes. The Raza de Meir learns Pshat. Why did Yaakov die young? So it says he died young because Ishtoi Kegufai. A wife is like your own body. And therefore, since he cursed his wife, and he is Ishta Kegufa, it's like one body, the curse boomeranged on him as well. That's the way the Raz of the Meir learns. Now that's a very powerful, it's a very powerful lesson. It's a very powerful application of Ishta Kegufa. You see that sometimes if a wife does things that are deserving of death, it could affect the husband also, or vice versa. That's it gives us an idea of the seriousness of the statement in Chazal, Ish nitfas al anshe beisa. A man is held accountable for the deeds of his wife. But there's another way to learn this Paneach Raz. And that is that Yaakov, it's not because his wife was cursed and he's one with his wife, that's why he's cursed. That's not what it means. It means because he generated the death of his wife, that she should die so young with this curse, that's why he died young. That's why he lost 33 years. Person has to make Chachamim, Huzharu b'divreichem, be very careful with your words. Bris crucilis v'zayin. It says Yesimcha Elikim. We know that this is a bracha that parents give to their children Friday night, as Rashi says. It's a custom of parents to give blessing. Yesimcha Elikim ke'Ephraim Menashe. Hashem should make you like Ephraim and Menashe. So first of all, there's a famous Rabbeinu Bachya, the name Ephraim. When Yosef gave his son Ephraim, you have to know it was a tremendous miracle that Osnas had Ephraim and Menashe. The Medrash tells us that Osnas was an islandess. She was incapable to have children. And Hashem made a miracle and she had children. It was a great miracle. And I believe that's why Ephraim, Aleph Pei Reish Yud Mem, I see different combinations. Ephraim is the same letters as pre-aim, the fruit of the mother. Ephraim and Menashe were twins, pre-aim, because he was remembering the miracle that this woman gave birth, pre-aim. He was also giving credit to Osnas, because if it wouldn't be for Osnas, they wouldn't have children. Remember when Yosef was accused by the wife of Potiphar of molesting her. Remember that she thought nobody else was around because it was their day of worship, and everybody left. She feigned sickness because she knew she would be alone with Yosef. But Osnas, who was the granddaughter of Yaakov, the daughter of Dinah, also didn't go to the church, and she saw what happened, and she would testify. That's embedded in her name, Osnas, that Onasta, that it wasn't your fault, Tati. Also, Osnas is embedded in her name that she was a proof that the bia between Dinah and her father, Shem, was onas, was a rape. It wasn't consensual. So all of that is in the name. But Rabbeinu Bachya says that Ephraim stands for something else. Yosef wanted to name Ephraim after his two holy Zaydis, Avram and Yitzchak. Avram was supposed to be ash in the Kivshan Ha'esh when Nimrod threw him in. And Yitzchak was supposed to be ash on the Akedah. So Ephraim is Ephir Yud Mem, Ephrim, the plural of Ephir. And it remembers the Ephir of Avram, of the Kivshan Ha'esh, and the Ephir of Yitzchak at the Akedah. So he named his child Ephraim that he should be zeichet to the Mesiris Nefesh, to the sacrifice of his father, his great Zayda Avram and his Zayda Yitzchak. When we give a bracha to our children, Yesimcha Likim Kefraim Menashe, Ephraim learned Torah. Menashe was Isaac and Parnasa. That's why Menashe is Gematria 395. It's the same Gematria as Parnasa, 395. Ephraim was Isaac in Torah with Mesiras Nefesh, and Menashe was Isaac and Parnasa. And when we give our children the bracha, Yesimcha Likim Kefraim Menashe, we're giving them the bracha of Hatzlacha in Ruchnias and Gashmias. And we're very careful to say Ephraim first, because we give bracha first for spirituality and only then for the material. As a matter of fact, there's a famous Chasam Sofer, Tzadik L'Vracha Zchus Yagen Aleinu. The Chasam Sofer says that the Gemara says in Bava Metzia, it's a Gemara in Bava Metzia, Daf Pei Hey Amid Beis, Mitnei Ma'acharav Habayis. Why was the temple destroyed? Shaloi Beruchu B'Torah Tchila, because they didn't make the bracha on the Torah first. What does it mean? They didn't say Berachas HaTorah. So the Chasam Sofer says Shaloi Beruchu B'Torah Tchila. When they benched their children, they didn't bench them with Torah Hatzlacha first. He said you should be comfortable, should have a nice house, a good horse, and you should learn good too. No, that's no good. It has to be first Torah. Simcha Likim Kefrayim, that's the man of Torah, then Menashe, also should have good Gashmias as well. Always Ruchnias first. By the way, Menashe, although he was the man of Parnasa, Menashe's B'Gematria Parnasa, it's also the same letters as Neshama. Yaakov wanted to remind him about spirituality. And it's also the same letters as Mishnah. And this is a reminder that when we learn Mishnayos and have a regular course of Mishnayos, it helps our Parnasa. That's why it says, Me Osher Shmeina Lachmai. Shmeina is Oisius Mishnah, and Lachmai, one has his bread. Mishnah is B'Gematria Parnasa. So from Mishnah comes Hatzlacha with Parnasa. Now Mishnah also, we know that, I don't want to belabor the point, but we know that the Medrash Talpius in the Hagdama says that anybody that learns regular Mishnayos, Osher stands by the door of Gehenim and will not let them in. And that's May Osher Shmeina, Osher, and then it says Shmeina, which is the same letters as Mishnah. Osher stands by the door of Gehenim and doesn't let anybody in that learns regular Mishnayos. Vayomer LiYosef, they told Yosef, Hinei avicha chola. Behold, your father is sick. So we're medayik that from the fact that they had to tell Yosef, that means that Yosef didn't know. Because for 17 years, Yosef did not habituate his father, even though when he was young, he learned with his father day and night, and by the age of 17, he learned everything that his father amassed in Shem ve'Aver in the 14 years that he studied without sleeping. But here, Yosef did not spend alone time with his father, and as the Mefarshim say, it was because that Yaakov shouldn't ask him, so tell me, Yosef, tell me the story, what happened? You disappeared, I sent you to Shechem to find about your brothers, they brought your cloak back torn. What happened? And he was afraid that then he would have to tell his father, can't lie. And he was afraid his father might curse the Shvatim. Look what happened when he inadvertently cursed his wife. He was afraid. So he never was alone was a big sacrifice. So the Oyel Aryeh says a piece of information that is very revealing. The Oyel Aryeh said, so who took care of Yaakov? So you would think either the Shvatim, maybe Binyamin, maybe Yehuda, or the grandchildren of Ephraim and Menashe. The Oyel Aryeh brings down from Midrashim that Osnas took care of Yaakov, Yosef's wife. And he explains because Yosef didn't want to lose the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em, but when his wife took care of his father, it's ishtay kegufa. A remarkable thing. A remarkable thing. My wife goes to visit my mother by Shalosh Shudas. I get a mitzvah of kibbud av v'em through ishtay kegufa. It's a remarkable thing. It's a remarkable. That's why he didn't have his sons do it. He couldn't do it himself, but he wanted Ishtay Kegufa. It's such a powerful idea. Now, on this pasuk of Hinei Avicha Chayla, there's a extraordinary Shiltus Derav Achai going. The Shiltus writes something that Lamdonim have tried to figure out for millennia. For decades and decades, scores of decades. The Shiltus Derav Achai Gaon makes a halachic statement about Bikur Chayla. It goes as follows. Lo yelech adam levaker es hachayla levadai. You shouldn't visit a sick person alone. Ela yelech im acherim levaker. You should go together with someone else. Now I have to tell you, the Rambam doesn't say this. Shulchan Aruch Siman Shin Lamed Hey doesn't say it. Torah Shulchan Aruch doesn't say it. The great Netziv, who he was a remarkable person, the Netziv, because the Netziv wore two incredible hats. He was the Rosh Yeshiva of the mother of all yeshivas, Volozhin, and he was the Rav of the great city of Volozhin. The Netziv wrote a remarkable pirush on the Shiltus. Many shuls learn it Friday night. He wrote a pirush Hamek Sheila. And on this statement that the Shiltus says that you shouldn't go alone, but you should go with people, he writes, Loi matzosiv b'shum rishon oy achrein. I haven't found this in any rishon or achrein. V'hu pella. So, when you have a cryptic statement, who might try to plumb it to understand it? If not for the great Gaon in Klal Yisrael, the Ragatchover. So the Ragatchover Gaon, Zech Tzadik V'Bracha Schus Yagan Aleinu, in his Sefer Tzafnas Paneach, says that the source is from this pasuk. It says, Hinei Avicha Chayla, Vayikach Eshnei Vanav Imai, Es Menashe Es Ephraim. So he took his two children with him, so you see that you shouldn't go alone. Of course, there seems to be a hole in this proof, because you'll say that maybe he took his two children because he was still steadfast in Yaakov not being alone with Yaakov. He didn't want Yaakov to ask him, so what happened? Tell me, I finally want to find out the mystery. Or he took his two children with him so that they should receive a blessing. The Rogatchover then says, the Rogatchover guy then says another possible source, because the Gemara brings a remez for Bikur Chaylim, Because the pasuk says, "V'data lehem es haderech yelchu ba," and each word in the pasuk "V'data lehem es haderech yelchu ba" refers to a type of gemilas chasadim, and the Gemara says "Yelchu ze bikur chaylim." A lot of times they have to travel far for bikur chaylim, and the Ragat Shava says "Yelchu" is b'lashon rabin. So that's maybe a proof that it should be done by more than one person. That's the tzafnas paneah. It's a little bit kasha because one of the sources of bikur chaylim is by kairach, where it says that if they die a regular death, upkudas kol adam yipaket, and like every person is visited, they get a visit. So then Moshe Rabbeinu says, Lo Hashem shlachani. And there it says yipaket in the singular. The Gaon Rav Yosef Engel in the Gilyon HaShas says that's not what the Shiltus means. He takes the Shiltus different. He just says the Shiltus means don't just go yourself, but convince other people to go also. Because the more people that go, the more they take away the sickness from the chayla, the more they pick up his mood. That's so. Years ago already, I wanted to suggest a different reason, and that is, and maybe it might be what the Rogatchover guy meant. You shouldn't go to somebody when they're dying alone, because the person might ask you questions that you don't want to answer. You come in the room and he says, could I ask you, what did so-and-so really think of me? What did so-and-so say about me? What did my business partners feel about me? And I'll put you in a very difficult position. You have to speak Lashon Hara. So don't go alone. He won't ask you in front of another person. It's possible. It's a big chiddush. But this year, I happened to find a Beis Yosef in Hilchus in Tur Shulchan Aruch. So my mother, Zolzain Gesund, gave me a tur, a large tur. It was very, very fortuitous that she gave it to me, because afterwards her house would have a flood and all the Sfarim would be destroyed. But I have the tur, and using that tur, on the tur is the Pirush of the Beis Yosef. Beis Yosef is the Rabbi Yosef Kairei, the author of Shulchan Aruch. So the tur brings down that the Beis Yosef brings down from a rear source. The source is Masechtas Smachas. Masechtas Smachas is one of the small Masechtas. And the Tur says as follows. The Beis Yosef says as follows. That upon visiting a dying man, they should remind him Sheyitain daitai al asakav, al inyonav. He should pay attention to his matters. Maybe he took a loan from someone. Maybe he has somebody's pekadon. He wants to tie the loose ends beforehand. And the lashon of Masechtas Smachas is maskirin in the plural. Because maybe it's not right to give mussar like that alone. So maybe this is a source for this mysterious Shiltus de Rabbi Achai. Now, before I say the last thought of the evening, there is something extraordinary happening this week yet, and that's Asar B'Tevis, a fast on Erev Shabbos going into Shabbos. That's an extraordinary thing. It's the only fast ever on a Friday. Perhaps I'll address that for the Shabbos table, Be'ezus Hashem. But before I say the last word, I want to thank my Talmud, Eliyahu Shimon Ben Meir, Philippe Black, for dedicating the shir in honor of his Aliyah, for Klal Yisrael, the hope of Achdus in Klal Yisrael, the safety of the soldiers, the rescue of the hostages. I want to thank my virtual Talmida, Alona Bander, who sponsored the shir, for successful shidduchim for our children, Rivka Bas Alona Devora and Shalom Ben Alona Devora, speedily and good. And to say that if you would like to sponsor a shir, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. It says that when Yaakov is on his sickbed, Vayishtachu Yisrael al Reish Hamita, that Yisrael bowed down to the head of the bed. And Rashi says, Hofach atzmoi l'tzad hashchina, he turned himself to the side of the Shechina. Mikan amru she'ashchina lamala merashosav shel chayil, that the Shechina is upon the bed of a sick person, by the head of a sick person, as the pasuk says, Hashem yishkevenu al eres devoy. Hashem is there by the bed of a sick person. This has halachic ramifications. If you look in Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Bikur Chaylim, in Shin Lamed Hey, it says that when you go to a chayla, you should be misatef. Misatef means you should robe yourself. And I believe that this means that if it's not going to scare anybody, and it's not going to make anybody wonder, when you visit a sick person, you should wear Shabbos Dika Begad. Why do we think that we try to do Kiddush Levana Matzah Shabbos? Because it says that when we do Kiddush Levana, we're Mekabel Pnei Hashchina. And therefore we want to do it when we're wearing our Shabbos Dika Begadim. Since by the bed of a chayla, there's Shechina, so therefore it says in the Shulchan Aruch, Misatef. So you'll say, Rabbi Weiss, if so, I should wear Shabbos Dika Begadim whenever I learn. Because it says in Pirkei Avos, Afilu echad yoshev v'oisik b'Torah Shechina connected. It's a good kasha. So we have to know there's different concentrations of Shechina. Rab Shimshon Pincus, which I saw brought down in the Sefer Leitivcha B'Achri Secha, what a wonderful Sefer. Telling you, I don't have it on Chumash Shemais. If anybody is in any Svarim store where they see the Sefer Leitivcha B'Achri Secha on Chumash Shemais, it would be an incredible gift to get it from me. I cannot find it. I would love to have the Sefer on Chumash Shemais. I have not been able to find it. There is one, but everywhere I go they tell me it's out of print. But in some Svarim store, it's lying on a shelf. Leitivcha B'Achri Secha. I would love to get my hands on it. But anyway, he brings down from Reb Shimshon Pincus, that Reb Shimshon Pincus says that he believes that a building that has the most concentrated Shechina is a hospital. Because in a hospital, the Shechina is on every bed. Now, you'll wonder, here in Lakewood, we're blessed with Batei Midrashim, with 1,000 Bachrim learning. It's literally 1,000 Bachrim learning. That's an amazing amount of Shekhinah. It seems to be that the Shekhinah that supports a sick person is a great concentration of Shekhinah. And we know that the Shekhinah comes in different concentrations. That we know from the famous story with Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. You've heard this story from me. Actually said it by the Sheva Brachos tonight. Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach carried in his pocket a tube of water. And before he went into his house, he would take out the tube, take out some water, put it on his hand, and smooth out his beard. Somebody once said that and said, usually people do that when they leave the house. So someone with a romantic bent will say, well, he's going into his wife, so he's making himself nice for his wife. It's very romantic, but that's not what he said. He said more than that. He said, I live with my wife with Shalom Bayis. And it says, Ish v'isha shalom beineim, shchina shruya beineim. If there's peace, they have shchina. I am going to greet the shchina in my home. Now, where did Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach come from? He came from the Beis Medrash. He came from a place of shchina. Seems to be that the shchina created by a husband and wife with Shalom Bayis is a more elevated, a more concentrated shchina. Seems to be there. Pinchas held also the shchina by a sick person is also a more concentrated shchina. That's one of the reasons why it says to visit a chayla, because you could daven there where the shchina is, that concentrated shchina. We shouldn't know from sickness. We should know from the shchina of Shalom Bayis. I want to thank you for joining us and wish you all a good night, an easy tanis, and a good Shabbos.